A little while, Gina.
May I introduce Mr. Byron Champlin, who is joining me here tonight to talk briefly about what you folks just watched. Mr. Champlin, thank you very much.
You also Steelman.
How many times have you seen this?
This is my second.
Second. I have to confess, and it's going to tip you off as to how old I am. I saw this in Burlington, Vermont in 1951, and
You would have had to have given me my Bible.
I remember being impressed with it, even at that very young age.
I have to say that I sat here when this ended and I just said, wow, the denouement of the film. I think this is an amazing film, and an online film viewer poll rated this as, I think, the 7th best David Lean film. After Lawrence of Olivier and Dr. Zhivago and A Passage to India.
Lawrence of Arabia.
What did I say?
Of Olivier.
Oh yeah, Lawrence of Olivier. Yeah, Lawrence of Arabia. I'm sorry.
When Oliver Twist was first published, Dickens' tale was considered to have some anti-Semitic overtones because of how Fagin's character was depicted. When David Lean and company decided to use the George Cruikshank illustrations found in the original editions of the book for Fagin's appearance, they opened the door for criticism and condemnation. In this country, key Jewish organizations deemed the movie contained anti-Semitic content and caused a delayed release of the film until 1951. The objections raised resulted in the deletion of 7 minutes worth of footage, primarily specific profile shots of Fagin and other aspects of Alec Guinness's portrayal. Although well received by American movie critics in 1951, the film received absolutely no Academy Award nominations. Dickens' story has been filmed on 9 occasions. It was released as a theatrical feature film entitled Oliver Twist in 1922, 1933, 1948, and 2005. It was shown as a TV movie in 1982, presented as a TV miniseries in 1985 and 2007. There was a theatrical musical version called Oliver, produced in 1968. That was based on a stage production first seen in 1960. That film won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, Carol Reed. The Disney organization created a theatrical animated version named Oliver and Company in 1988. Dom DeLuise provided the voice of Fagin, believe it or not. Robert Loggia did the vocals for Sykes. Over the years, the role of Fagin has been portrayed by Alec Guinness, Irving Pitchell, Lon Chaney Sr., Ben Kingsley, Ron Moody, George C. Scott, and Timothy Spall. The villainous Sykes has been portrayed by Robert Newton, Oliver Reed, Tim Curry, and Tom Hardy. The character of Oliver has been performed by John Howard Davies, Jackie Coogan, Diggy Moore, and Mark Lester. It's had quite a history, Dickens' story. How many of those versions have you seen, Mr. Champ?
Unfortunately, I saw Oliver, which was not one of my favorite depictions. I mean, I think what's interesting about the depictions over the years is Dickens was a social commentator. Dickens was thrown into debtor's prison because of his father's debts, and worked in a bootblack factory, if you know what that is. In other words, he worked in a factory that made boot polish, and in order to try to earn his father's way out of debtor's prison. And the rest of his life was imprinted with a sense of social outrage at the mores of his time and the way that the poor and children were treated. You know, this is a time when we're all thinking about A Christmas Carol, and A Christmas Carol, unfortunately, has been kind of bowdlerized the way that Oliver Twist has, to take the edge off and to make it a little bit more cozy, to make Scrooge, taken from being a very hard-nosed businessman, to making some kind of an amusing, funny, crotchety misanthrope. What impresses me about this version of Oliver Twist is that Lean, I think, really left the hard edges in. He really left and you know, this book was serialized, as many of Dickens's novels were. They were originally serialized in magazines, and he literally wrote it chapter by chapter to collect the money to, you know, put it in. As Barry said, it was criticized in 1854 by Jewish organizations, which really found it shocking that a guy who was known as being someone who fought for social justice would characterize, the Jewish race in the way that we see Fagin portrayed. In fact, in the first 38 chapters of the book, there were 257 instances of Fagin being described as the Jew, whereas Bill Sikes, who is the other heavy in this, his ethnicity or race or religion is never mentioned. The wife of the man who bought Dickens's house, a Jewish businessman, to whom Dickens warned, she wrote him and excoriated him for this, and noted that at that time period, the only jobs that Jews could have were rag pickers, used clothing salesmen, and money lenders, because the Christians did not lend money, many of them, because of biblical prohibitions. And he was so guilty that he went and he stopped the presses on the printing of the book. And he stopped the presses at chapter 38. And that's why in today's versions there are 257 uses of the term the Jew to describe him in the first 38 chapters. But very, 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 very few, almost none, in the rest of the book, because he edited it out. But what I really took away from this film this time that I saw it was the editing. David Lean began as literally a tea boy in British movie companies, and then he was made a clapper boy, the kid who holds that clapper sign that shows at the beginning of the scene. And he worked his way up to an assistant director, and then he became an editor. And I think, although he's not credited with editing this, I think his eye as an editor is evident and lends to the power of the film. Think about the scene of the murder of Nancy by Bill Sikes. Think of the dog clawing at the door. You don't see the cudgel come down on Nancy, but you see the terrified dog trying to get away from the scene. And then after that little interlude, the little sunrise interlude, you go to the murder scene. The close-up on Bill Sikes' face, the cutaway to Nancy's dressing table and all of her little personal items. You go back to Bill Sikes' face. You go to the empty bed, and the camera stays there for a little while. You go back to Bill Sikes' face, showing desperation and fear. And then you see Nancy's hand sticking out from under the coverlet with the shadow of the curtain fluttering across it. That is powerful filmmaking and powerful editing, and it creates, without any dialogue, you get the sense of the madness of Sikes when he murders her, and then the gradual revelation, the gradual realization that he has of what he's done and what the consequences are going to be. That's really what I take away from the film.
And you have to realize that Sure, it's in the hands of the editor to put it together effectively, but the editor can only put together what has been photographed. And when it is photographed in a way, you realize pretty much it is in the hands of the director who is guiding the course of the story so that the editor can indeed create what he's going to get credit for putting together.
I wonder if anybody recognized the lead actor in this, Robert Newton.
Oh,
Yeah?
yeah. But he's also in Treasure Island.
Oh, that's right. Robert Newton is probably the single person most responsible for Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Yeah.
Robert Newton is, like so many other actors, sometimes during the course of careers, they get known for a specific part.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Newton was really known for being a pirate, specifically Long John Silver, which he portrayed in a Disney-produced British version of the film in 1950. There was a, well, I'll do the film a little justice, not too much, because it definitely was not in the shadow of the original. But about 4 years later, in Australia, a sequel was produced with Newton redoing his Long John Silver impersonation called Long John Silver, which spawned a TV series down in Australia. Newton was down in Australia for perhaps less than honorable reasons. He was a chronic alcoholic, and he had kind of worn out his welcome in the movie industry by becoming an unreliable personality because of the alcoholism. And indeed, in 1956, Newton died of a heart attack at the age of 50. But there was a lot of thought put into the possibility that drink and its ramifications had a lot to do with his death at that age.
How many people recognized a young Anthony Newley as the Artful Dodger?
Oh.
And Anthony Newley went on to quite a career as in English, British, and American film, as a singer and as an entertainer. I thought he was very powerful as the Artful Dodger. His sense of remorse at having, at having followed and squealed Nancy, and his reaction when he comes into the room where she's been murdered was really quite something. Also, I'm wondering what the audience thought of the portrayal of the British workhouse system, which was really what this novel in part was written about, was the way that the poor were treated. And how did you like, I guess, the speech by the chairman of the board of the workhouse, worrying about that they were being taken advantage of?
And it's entertaining.
Welfare cheats. Yes.
And John Bull.
Yes, as the owner of the three, what is it? The
Three cripples.
Three Cripples, yes.
He was the Russian ambassador in Dr. Strangelove.
That's correct. That's right.
It's Peter Bull.
Peter Bull.
Peter Bull.
Yeah, I was trying to remember.
Peter Bull.
Yeah, he's also in the African Queen too, if I remember correctly. I think he's
the captain of the German ship, the Mary Louise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the one who hangs Humphrey Bogart, or tries to hang Humphrey Bogart and Catherine Hepburn. Yeah. Was there anything that struck any of you about the movie in particular?
The music was very loud, at least in the beginning. It was sort of overwhelming.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was uncommon, or does that anybody else feel that way? It certainly raised the level of excitement.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a very effective use of sound and imagery too. You know, the scene where they're walking across the snow-covered courtyard to learn to learn a trade, oka, you know, which is set, you know, shot from above in stark white with the black figures walking along, and the kind of hook-shaped pseudo-barbed wire at the top of the wall, kind of creating this claw aspect. There are a lot of scenes like that that were really interesting. When Oliver's mother at the very beginning starts to go into labor pains, you know, and it shows this kind of two briary, thorny images that start to kind of constrict, that give you a sense of her pain. I just think this is an incredibly artful, you know, film. It's so artful that I don't think you really realize how he's working at it.
Yes. Lady who should be given probably more credit than she usually receives is Kay Walsh,
Yeah.
who plays Nancy in this. At the time when this was made, she was, and had been for about 8 years, the wife of David Lean, the director. She met Lean as a film editor in the mid-30s, and they formed a relationship which was officiated with marriage in 1940. They stayed married for about another year until 1949, when it was an interloper by the name of Ann Todd, who kind of mixed up Mr. Lean and caused some infidelity, and the divorce took place in 1949. Walsh indeed stayed as a character actress in films until 1981. She died in 2005 at the age of 93 from multiple burns, which apparently were the result of some sort of accident, which I could never find a complete explanation as to what sort of tragedy caused her to be burned. She had a knack for visuals too, and writing. She gets a uncredited mark for working on the script of this and Great Expectations. Granted, when you're married to the director, you can indeed maybe exert a little more influence within a production, but she's also credited with coming up with some of the visual aspects of that open